Alright, what's going on, guys? It is your boy TKD1 here, back your PlayStation Source, and if you guys are watching this the day this does drop, we are hours away from playing Ghost of Tsushima. Let's go. I'm super hyped about it, but before we get there, we still got a few hours to go in between, as well as a few topics to talk about in terms of Ghost of Tsushima leading up to release in a few hours. So without further ado, let's go over the last remaining bits I gotta talk about in terms of Ghost of Tsushima. So mainly we are covering two topics here, but the first one is a topic that we have talked about a lot on the channel, is of course covering the stances. And I'll throw up a YouTube card up here that shows the latest video of our stances of Ghost of Tsushima that we broke down. But during that video, we did come to the realization that there is a third stance that we saw during the state of play, which was just a logo of it. They never did hover over it, or we never got a name for that stance, but we have a third stance, and then the fourth one, we just have no idea. We just saw its pose overall in that video. But going into the full release, a lot of people have gotten, of course, the game right now, and they have been playing it for a few days now, and we do have a full breakdown of all the stances and what they are useful for in terms of combat. But hey, before we break that down, make sure to leave a like on the video if you enjoyed the information that we will talk about here in this video, as well as stay subscribed to PlayStation Source to keep up with the latest and greatest in PlayStation. Down below, of course, you can find our join button to become a member. You can become a Prince tier or a King tier, get access to different emojis and stuff like that that you can use during live chats and on comments, as well as have a channel badge, all that great stuff. And if you are a King tier member for $5, you can of course be shouted out in every video, just like the homie Owen. Shout out to you, Owen. Much love to you, King. And let's get back into the good stuff here. So all these stances are going as follows. Of course, first we have the stone stance, which is going to be the swordsman stance. So you're going to want to use this for enemies that have swords. This one is your pretty much like regular run of the mill stance that you were going to use generally from the whole game from start to finish. Next up, we have of course the warrior stance, which is for shieldsmen. So for enemies that are wielding shields, you can use this stance to be more effective against them. And next up here, we have a name now for the unknown stance that we talked about in that video with these stances and all that good stuff, where we have that third stance that wasn't really explained. We just got a logo for it, and we know that it had to deal with spears because it had a spear in the logo, and we finally have that all broken down and confirmed. So it is called the wind stance, and this is going to be of course for spearsmen. So those that have spears and are wielding them, you will be able to be more effective against them with the wind stance. And lastly here, the unknown fourth one, we finally got the answer to it. It is of course the moon stance, and this moon stance is going to be used for those enemies and those Mongols that are considered brutes. Like they are like heavily armored enemies. They're big, hulking, you know, enemies that are going to do whatever to you, charge at you, I don't know, like just that like just have brute force. It is going to be dealing with those individuals specifically. So that's the whole breakdown here. We have stone stance, warrior stance, wind stance, and moon stance. Those are the four stances, and we have this cool little diagram here showing off all of them, as well as how they can be upgraded as well. So it looks like they are going to become more effective as you upgrade them, and maybe they'll be upgraded via technique points, I believe, or something like that. So we will be able to double down on these stances and make them a lot more powerful than their base counterparts. So good stuff right there. There's all the stances. Know those before you jump in tonight. And next up here, the other part of this video I want to really talk about is of course the concept of the format that you can play Ghost of Tsushima in terms of what you value most in terms of performance versus resolution. So of course, just like God of War, this game has been told to have two different formats of ways that you can play the game, whether it be for performance mode or of course resolution mode. And so those will have vice versa effects. Performance mode traditionally is supposed to give you a boost in frame rate and make the game feel overall more smoother, while resolution may sacrifice some performance, but it will boost the fidelity and quality of the actual resolution of the game. And so of course in God of War, famously, it was, I believe, if I remember top of my head, the resolution mode was upscaled 4K, but it was definitely a higher quality than 1080p, but it did have 30 frames per second, as opposed to the performance mode, which brought up to 60, that silky smooth 60, but it was at 1080p, making it a little bit less graphically, you know, impressive, I guess you could say. So for me, just for that game, just really quickly, I played the whole game on day one, you know, with resolution mode on. So I was seeing the game with such a high resolution and all that good stuff, whatever, but the frame rate was at 30. I flipped it on to performance one time, like maybe like towards the end of the game, and I could not go back to resolution mode. Just like the game felt so much smoother. It felt so right when it was in performance mode that, you know, that's just how I choose to play, you know, God of War 2018 is definitely in performance mode. Like I definitely need all the frames I can get, right? However, the difference between frame rate, performance mode, and resolution mode in Ghost of Tsushima may be not as wide of a gap as one would hope it would be. So let's just break it all down here. This info comes to us from Digital Foundry, and they did a whole analysis in terms of how the two modes differ from each other. And so first they take some notes and some paragraphs about each mode, then they go into the frames per second in each mode. But starting off here, performance mode drops the resolution to 1080p high definition, and it also includes the UI and can make the in-game text less legible, allegedly, from what they're saying. So get your glasses ready, because it looks like if you're on performance mode, it looks like you're gonna need some lenses to be able to read this UI and text. But the more kind of, I guess, like, you know, shocking thing for me here was that during performance mode, they said that, you know, in an effort, of course, to get the solid frames that they needed, of course, with the trade-off being resolution and asset quality, it'll only get players a solid 30 frames per second performance. So I had to read that a couple times. I was like, wait, like there's no way that's true. But when you go to the high resolution performance mode, which runs at 1800p, so of course it'll be looking super sharp, super crisp, all that great stuff, and they said that it is likely achieved by using checkerboard rendering with this format as well. They also recommend that you use this mode if you have 4K TVs. That way you can take advantage of those sharp visuals and all that great stuff. But they close out by saying that you will still get a, quote, mostly solid 30 frames per second performance. And so this is where I'm kind of drawing at. So essentially what is going on here is that Ghost of Tsushima runs at 30 frames per second on both the base PS4 and the PS4 Pro, and having the game in performance mode does not achieve 60 frames. You will remain at 30 frames, but drop frames are less common on performance mode as opposed to resolution mode, which you will probably get some drop frames, and it will be an unstable 30 frames. I'm gonna keep it honest, guys. I'm a little bit disappointed on this whole thing, right? Like, I understand that, you know, Ghost of Tsushima is a big game, and I'm sure they were targeting 60 frames, and I'm sure that was the goal, but, you know, like, I'm sure there are also reasons why they couldn't hit that goal that are truly legitimate in this case. But man, that is a little bit upsetting to not have 60 frames on Ghost of Tsushima, but it is what it is, guys. It's just not what you would traditionally hear when a game is in performance mode. Like you would hear when a game is in performance mode that's when we get that 60 frames and stuff like that. But it looks like we'll be getting a stable 30. But hey, it is what it is. We have seen plenty of other games that run at 30 that feel silky smooth, so I guess we will have to see and hope that Ghost of Tsushima is one of those games. And of course, you can catch my live streams, guys, tonight here on the channel is when they start the release of Ghost of Tsushima. We are starting the Ghost of Tsushima stream series on the channel. Make sure to not miss out on that. If you are wanting to just see my reactions and just see my first playthrough with Ghost of Tsushima, they'll be live here on the channel tonight, starting at 9 p.m. Pacific and 12 a.m. Eastern. I had to get that right. There we go. All right, and check it out there as well here on the channel. Make sure to keep it locked here to watch the stream series. And if you don't want to miss those and be notified every time I go live or I upload a video, make sure to ring that notification bell as well as subscribe to the PlayStation Store to keep up with the latest and greatest in PlayStation. Down below, of course, you can follow our links to our Discord, our Twitter, as well as our Anchor link to listen to our long-form content and podcast format. That, of course, in Road to Part 2 and Road to Ghost of Tsushima, which will debut this weekend with our first impressions of the game. And also, if you're enjoying the content a lot, make sure to hit that join button as well to become a member of the channel. You can have exclusive emojis and different stuff like that during streams, as well as have a channel badge on the channel whether you comment or chat on live streams. Thank you for watching the video. Hope you guys enjoyed it, and as always, greatness awaits.